Hey, this is Drew Davis again with the Every Arkansan podcast. This week we've got Michelle Douglas from The Call sharing how she started chasing her God-given dream for the foster children of Arkansas. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for being with us today on the podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born and raised in Central Arkansas, and my husband, John, and I will celebrate our 19th wedding anniversary soon. I am a boy mom extraordinaire, in that I have a 14-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So I get to experience all kinds of milestones simultaneously. Never thought I'd be dealing with teenage angst and potty training at the same time, but that's where I am. And professionally, I am the program director for The Call. I started doing my undergrad at Henderson State in Arkadelphia, went to grad school in Little Rock at UALR, spent 9 years in higher education, and really just began volunteering for The Call for about 6 years, and I joined staff in 2013.
So one of the things we really like to talk about is just how in the world you ended up on this God-given dream journey of yours. So had you always planned on being involved in foster care and orphans and those things, or is that something that just kind of cropped up its head somewhere along the line?
Well, I actually grew up in church with a family that adopted several children, and so they had fostered. And so God kind of broke my heart for that a little bit. That really morphed into being very involved in the Right to Life movement as a teenager. But then I get distracted and by going to college and getting married and having our first son. And the Lord really began to convict me via Veggie Tales, which is not the normal source of conviction, but it was one particular episode that my now 14-year-old watched about once every day for at least a year. And the verse that it was really all about was Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's workmanship created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which he prepared in advance for us to do. And so after about the 70th time of watching this, I realized that while I had a great job, I wasn't really using my gifts for the glory of God. I was working at the local university teaching and loved the job, but I wasn't glorifying God at that work. And so I began to pray. I didn't know what that looked like, but I honestly, I didn't necessarily know what my gifts were. I just began to pray that God would show me, that he would open a door or just let me know what it was I was supposed to do. Because if he created me to do something, I wasn't doing it and I needed direction. Within weeks of that prayer, on a Sunday morning at my church, I saw a video for a brand new ministry, The Call. And immediately everything kind of fell together. Like my heart for the family that I loved dearly growing up, and just knowing that this was the answer to the prayer. So I went to an informational meeting, again, not knowing. I didn't really think I was called to be a foster parent, but I knew that this was what God had for me. So I went and I just signed up. I just put my name down. I'll do something. Not sure what, but I'll do something. And within maybe 2 weeks of that, I got an email asking for trainers. And that's what I had been doing. I was teaching at a college, and my master's had a training focus. So I said, well, absolutely. Gifting, God's glory, sign me up. And the co-founder of The Call, Mary Carol Peterson, was actually the one that emailed me back and said, well, let's meet for coffee. And so when I left coffee, I was the training coordinator for The Call as a volunteer. And so I volunteered for about 6 years and then joined staff. So it's really just God. I mean, all of this is God orchestrating, first by using my child's cartoon to open up my heart to serving Him, and then making that very clear for me that that's my calling was to work with the call.
And so I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the foster care system, or at least from my experience, there's a lot of misconceptions. Explain how it really works, the
Okay.
whole scenario.
So, foster care is actually not punitive for families. Foster care is designed to be a service for families in need. And so, when you have families that are struggling to meet the needs of their children, for the most part, the majority of the families served by the child welfare system in Arkansas are families where children are not put in foster care. And they're families that just need help meeting those needs. When DCFS deems that it's not safe for a child to remain in the home, then the child is removed so that they can go somewhere safe, but also so that the family can get the services they need to be healthy. The goal of foster care is restoration of the family. And so for the call, that's our heart, because that's what foster care is that we want to show these children the extravagant love of Jesus by giving them a family that will love and nurture them while their family is getting the support that they need. And we want to work hand in hand with the family, or have our families work hand in hand with the children's family, so that they can find restoration. Because, I mean, that's what the gospel is restoration.
So the call kind of is training and equipping people to be that foster parent.
Right.
So, and we oftentimes hear, oh, if every church would just take in one kid. What's the true situation in Arkansas, at least, for how many kids are in foster care? How many are still needing?
So right now there are about 4,300 children in foster care, and there are only 1,600 families to take care of them. And so there is a legitimate need. There are 5,900 churches. So not even every church has to have a foster family. Our role at the call, we exist to really equip the church to step into this space. We bridge the gap between the church and the state agency. And so we do believe that if every church would engage, but really we only need about 10% of churches in Arkansas to be actively engaged, to have a culture for serving foster families, for serving biological families. And we believe we can have more than enough families to care for children when they come into foster care, more than enough families. Right now, there are about 263 children who are in need of forever families, and children who are not matched with any family, children who are just waiting for a forever family. And we want more than enough families that are able and willing to take those children in and give them a forever family.
What's that look like as far as a family that brings in, what's a typical family that's bringing in a foster child look like?
Well, it looks like everything, honestly. So we have families of all ages, of all stages of life. We have young married couples that have never had children bringing in teenagers. We have retired families bringing in sibling groups because they're empty nesters. So the diversity of our families is as diverse as the children in foster care. And when they bring in that child, it's ideally, we're living out what God did for us, right? He adopted us. And so we are bringing that child in and showing them the love that we've been shown. And so it's a little bit like inviting the mission field into your living room.
When the kids we work with, and you were here earlier speaking with our team, just about some of the traumas some of these children have experienced and all that. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are scared of.
Yeah.
This kid's coming to us from some crazy situation, and we're bringing them in to our home.
Yeah.
What do you guys do to kind of help them with that? Because then these kids have a true need.
Absolutely.
And these families feel ill-equipped for this. What's the call doing with that?
So for one, we kind of demystify the process, and we break that down so that they can get open, because that can be a complicated process. And we also provide the pre-service training. So we will train the families that we have recruited, the training that is mandated by the state, which is not tremendously trauma informed. So we bring in some of that trauma informed component to kind of, modernize some of that content. But understanding that it's training parents, training people for a job that no training is adequate enough. So what we really do is, after the fact, we want to make sure that we're equipping the churches to wrap around those families. And we call it embrace, to embrace those families as they care for these children. It is scary because there are these concerns of what are we inviting into our home. But the reality is that these are children that have been hurt and broken by sin, not by their sin, by the sin of others. And who else but the church, the body of Christ, to step in to that brokenness? James 1:27 is our guiding verse. Pure and undefiled religion is this, to care for orphans and widows in their distress. There's a reason why it says in their distress. We have to go down with them in that brokenness and help them come out. They cannot come out from that brokenness alone. That speaks the same for their families. Their families are broken, and so they need someone to go down into that brokenness and bring them out. And that's the church. We should be the first ones in line to take care of these children, and to help them on their journey to heal, because God created us miraculously so that whatever that brokenness is, not only can he heal us physically and emotionally, but he can heal us spiritually through a lasting relationship with Jesus.
Those stories, I think it's really important for people to realize that just a little bit can go a long way.
Right.
What are some of those stories of success of these children coming into it? Because we know that aging out of the foster care system is a scary thing.
It is.
But what differences are you seeing made in people's lives, that both on the parent side and on the child side?
Well, ideally, that difference is made with the family, right? With the child's family. And so we have situations where our foster families really become extended families for our children. We have one family in Cleveland County, the Stones, who actually closed their home to foster care at one point so that they could bring in the mother of their child to their home because it was an infant, and so that they could help her bond with that child, help her learn how to parent. They still maintain that relationship. She's moved out, she has the child, and they are extended family. I could tell you other situations where children have gone to live with family or relatives, and our foster families are their extended family. We have another family in Baxter County where they, in some ways, are shared. Like, they're just one big family. It's definitely a unique melded family. And so they have all of their family events together. Christmas is together. And they go to church together. It's a beautiful, beautiful demonstration of what can do to restore people. And then you have the situations where the children cannot reunify. And so our hope then is that the child will be able to find that forever family and have some of those firsts that they were never able to have. And so you adopt a 12-year-old and you think, I've missed all the milestones. But that 12-year-old may or may not have ever had a birthday party. So you get to experience their first birthday party. You get to give them their very first bedroom. And things like that are just so life-altering for the children and for the families when we can help with that.
One of the things I always tell my staff, I'm usually ready to quit at least once a week.
Yeah.
What's something that you can tell these parents that are in this? How do you keep them encouraged? Because it's one of those things. You're bringing in a kid. It's not your own to your house, and yeah, there's going to be this friction, whether it's your own kids or your parenting style or lack thereof.
Yeah.
How do you keep them encouraged?
Well, for me, it's that relationship with Jesus, and it's making sure that we realize that whether it's me working in my capacity or it's a foster family, I'm not necessarily doing it for the family or even for the child. I'm doing it because the Lord has called me to do this. And so, because He's called me to do this, He will give me the strength that I need if I will rely on Him. And so, first of all, I would say that, we need to rely more on our relationship so that we can draw from that strength from Jesus Christ. The second thing is just to remind them that even though the child is broken and even though there are challenges, or when we have families, more often they'll have a difficult placement, and when that placement leaves, that child leaves, they're ready to give up, and then they get that phone call and it's the next child. What about the next child? Will you be the home that can help them? Because again, if we don't, if the body of Christ doesn't, who will? And honestly, it's just overcoming the doubts that the devil works into all of us, right? Making us think that we can't do it. But if we're called to do this, not that we will necessarily have, supernatural patience, but the Lord will certainly help us, and to reach out to other people around us to make sure that we have that network that will support us, that we can come and talk to when we're stressed instead of isolating.
And I mean, that's very important because I know Eric Gilmore does his Pie Nights, and it's just about bringing these families together
Mm-hmm.
that have gone through very similar
Yeah.
type events. And it's especially, I'm a parent of 3 biological daughters.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people that we need a support group just
Yeah.
for dads with daughters, just because it feels like I have no clue what I'm doing most of the time. But with so much of this, I mean, how does that work? Does the networking, even outside of churches, do y'all have events that y'all do that y'all bring foster parents together? And
We do. So, again, we work very closely with the churches. We're really partners with the churches. And so for the call, we're statewide. And so we actually have programs in 47 counties out of the 75. And so that will look a lot different depending on where you are. But what doesn't look different is the family. We're almost like a family unit. So in some counties, it's once a month we have a support group where we have that time for that networking, and where we have quality trauma informed education, because that's key in making sure that we're equipping families with what they need most, and that's the tools to be able to do that job. Some counties is every other month where we will do the education event, or we'll just do a parents night out. And so that looks like kids going in one area and having pizza and playing, and the parents going into another area of the church and just fellowship, just meeting with one another. And we have several counties who will do retreats with their families, and so they bond, like you said, they bond with each other. They have that support, and then we actually have volunteers in each of our organizations. We have someone called a family support coordinator, and that's the person that they can call. Some of our counties, that's our leader, our county coordinator, and so they have a difficult placement. They can just call and cry and vent. I was at one of my friends' houses who was having a hard time, and who was a foster parent, and her county coordinator shows up with dinner. Just, hey, I thought that maybe you would need this. So just loving on them, wrapping around them, giving them a safe place to be. And we have support centers in a few locations around the state. And so those are facilities where we have offices and where DCFS will do visitation. And we have clothes closets where people can come and get needs. But we have couches, and we have in Boone County in Harrison, we have this huge table where they literally say, like, this is where the majority of our family support happens, because we just visit, we just have that fellowship, we have that connection. So we have that with in all these little pockets around the state, but then we all do come together a couple of times a year for larger events. We're a part of the group that puts together the Hope Conference every year, and that's really just one of the highlights. I have foster families all over the state that tell me we look forward to that every year, because we know we're going to get good information, but we also know we're going to get to be with our people. So a wide variety of events, but that's critical to be able to have that family to support you.
You primarily work with churches. So what are you looking for from a church? Are you looking for a point person to kind of lead it? Or are you looking for a pastor to come to you and say, hey, how do we get this started? What's the best way for a church to get engaged with you guys?
Well, we really can do anything when it comes to getting engaged. Usually, it does involve a conversation with a pastor because a lot of people don't understand a lot about the foster care system. So that helps us introduce them to what the foster care system is, specifically what the needs are in their community. And then, really, it's more about what can we do for you as a church. If you are engaging in foster care, if you have families that are serving as foster families, how can the call help you? How can we bring our expertise, bring our tools to help you love on those families? So we have training that we can offer for teaching them how to embrace their families. Of course, we can help. They can help us, and we can help each other really in by hosting recruitments to calling people into really the mission field by being foster parents, and so they can host those events for us to really engage their church. But that relationship is really one where we try to help them as they engage in bringing their church, calling their church to fulfill James 127, and bridging that gap between the church and the state.
And what's the best way for someone to just get in touch with you guys?
So we have a website, thecallinarkansas.org. You can actually you can reach out to any of our counties. There's a map where you can click on where you live, and you can connect directly with that county. You can call us at our main office, and we can do that. We can connect you. Our number is 501-907-1048. 501-907-1048. And we also have a Facebook page where you can just, kind of stay up to date on the things that we're working on. So those are really the best ways, because we really want people to engage with their local organization. And so we want them to be able to connect with them directly by going to their website.
Well, Michelle, thank you so much for spending some time with us today, telling us about the call and the very important subject of foster care in Arkansas.
Thank you for having me.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Every Arkansan podcast. Michelle's story is one so many of us face. We're working, we're doing our life, and we just don't know what it is God's got in store for us. She started looking for it, and I pray that this episode inspires you to start asking God, what is it you created me for? And then you start chasing after your God-given